Welcome back to the Built Not Bought channel, guys, where earlier this year I purchased myself a 79 series after selling my beloved Duramax Patrol. And over the last few months I've been rebuilding this thing in the hopes to fall in love with the 79 series Land Cruiser like most of yous do. In the past few episodes we've stripped the thing fully down, repainted the cab, repowder coated the chassis and started the reassembly phase. And in this episode we have one mission. We just want to get the Cummins started for the first time. But does it go to plan, or do we have a few dramas? What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for coming back. If you want to catch up on some other episodes on the 79 series, I've dropped a link down below to the full playlist. If you haven't caught up on this, I suggest you do. But in last week's episode, I finally got the chassis basically completed. The motor's in for the last time, the gearbox is finally mounted, converter, flex plate, all that's done, and the suspension's fully buttoned up. So, first thing we're doing this morning, well, actually, you may have noticed in the title of this episode, I'm gonna try and fire this engine in this episode. So, with the 6BT Cummins, they're pretty easy to get running. Obviously, we've got no water, no like transmission, the fuel system will be a little bit like primitive and stuff, but with a few wires and the ECU and a bit of fuel, this thing should run sitting in the chassis like that. So, we can't run it for long, because obviously there's no water and stuff like that, but the goal is to just fire it and see if it works. So, first thing we're doing this morning, while the chassis is all apart and easy to access and all brand new, obviously all powder coated, I'm going to take it down to Superior Engineering. Now the guys there have been working on a new, I believe it's like a rear brake proportioning valve mount. So they want me to bring it down there so they can test fit it, do some content, photos and videos. Obviously because this thing's looking so brand new and just had the coil conversion done, it's the perfect car for them to use to get those shots. So we'll run down there, get the stuff that they need, then we'll get it back home and start working on the things we need to make this thing run. We're back on the road again, heading down to Superior. Now, while we're driving down, I want to have a quick chat about a couple of things. It's getting to the point in the build now where I need to make some decisions and I need some help with that. So drop some comments down below on a couple of things. Number one, do I run scrub bars and sliders, or do I keep it kind of clean with a tidy front bar, or do I go that kind of chunky slider brush bar look? Number two, the rear setup with the tray, do I do a canopy, do I do a half canopy, or do I do like a tub rack? I'm actually frothing that tub rack style at the moment, where you just kind of have the tent flush with the roof of the cab and then you have room underneath to put all your stuff. Because, I mean, the Patrol was a nice setup, but it gets real big, chunky and heavy. And that's perfect if you're doing like a full lap around Australia, but this is more of a weekend to build. I ain't doing massive 6-month trips at the moment. It's kind of like 1 to 2 weeks at a time. So comment down below, do I do a canopy, no canopy, tub rack? And also, do I run scrub bars or no scrub bars? The rest of the build I've kind of got sorted. We've got the interior, we've got the paint, the bodywork, the look, all the chassis and suspension's done. Obviously, you know the engine and driveline now, so it's the last few little details that I'm trying to work out. So let us know, but let's get down to Superior and see what the boys are doing. I believe, yeah, it's this little brake proportioning bracket thing. It's probably, I don't know if it's like a new thing coming out. It's probably just a little upgrade that they're doing, because obviously I do notice, and I've mentioned this before, a lot of their kits that they've had running for years, they'll always go back and tweak it and adjust it and improve it. So if this is anything to do with just the 79 series coil conversion, that's been available and a product they've had for years, but they're still continuously trying to improve it. And I believe this is one of those small details that they've put the time into to make it that little bit better, a little bit easier and a little bit more reliable for long-term stuff. So let's go find out what they've been working on. Alright, you guys already know, back down to my favourite suspension shop all time, Superior Engineering. So, met the boys there, their media crew, R&D crew, Angus was down just checking this bracket. So it is a new proportioning bracket for the coil conversion kit to mount to the rear of the diff rather than the front. Now, also got a little bit of help with getting my sway bar in. Now, there is a little trick here to keep the bushes squished together so you're able to slot it into the diff. Yeah, I struggled a bit at home with this, but the boys got it in a jiffy. Right, we finished up at Superior and I've just come down to drop in to see Kyle from Luxifer. Just built his new shed. I didn't plan to come here, so I've only got one mic on, so you probably won't be able to hear much of him, but I thought I'd come see the new shed. Look at the setup. What's up? You're running the greatest tools ever.
Mate, we a bit of a tool upgrade, obviously. So we were very lucky to need these tools right at the right time.
I know. So yeah, that's actually a funny thing. So you might have seen on Instagram, but the Aussie version Luxifer, because the big one's in America still.
Yeah.
He's rolled it, but it wasn't doing anything extreme. You were kind of, do you know how it rolled? Because I've seen the video and it's like a tyre might have been beat.
I think a tyre just delaminated the worst possible time, and just the way the wind was going and the way I had my tongue inside my helmet, I'm not exactly sure, but it just gripped in, man, and just the weirdest feeling ever, just toppled over at walking speed.
Yeah. So he's mid-rebuilding that. We did, I think last year I did a video and we were drifting behind this at Lakeside, I remember that.
Yeah.
My drift car was having issues. This worked all right.
This always goes well. I've never really had any big issues, but I'm looking at possibly selling it. So I thought I'd better go over the engine and make sure whoever gets in this thing won't die in a flaming wreck. This is the tailpipe of the jet engine.
Holy shit, I didn't even notice that when I came in before.
Looks like a missile, doesn't it? It looks like something that should be in like the Soviet era.
Holy fuck. Anyway, I thought I'd come down. The new shed, it's looking great. I didn't even plan to come here. I said, oh, you're around the corner. He's like, yeah, drop in. I wasn't going to film anything, but I thought the camera's here.
This is a real workshop.
This is Luxifer, so this is the rollover, a bit of damage, boom, boom. So hopefully soon I'm going to get the boys together, because Kent's also sponsored by SP, so we had a couple of drift cars out, maybe Luxifer. Oh, if you maybe build a drift car.
That is my drift car. You've been in that, man.
We can go do some content.
I call that the cone collector.
I remember that. I was trying to teach him how to drift and we collected a few cones. He's gotten way better.
It was cutting out. That was my first time.
I seen you drifting at Weston's on his new pad. It went pretty good in the Z.
And Weston always shows the worst of me. Like he's like, I was like, bro, you know I was drifting way, but he goes, oh no, it's funny when you're bad. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But, no, this is nice.
It's clean.
Pity you put a Land Cruiser body on and not a Hilux.
I know. It's a bit of a shame.
It's
like a really long Hilux. It's so fucking long, dude. I don't know why they're so long.
I like Land Cruisers. I got my thing, you know, my Hilux guy. So.
Well, I don't think Kyle's going to help me build this thing, so I'm going to get this thing home and continue working. I think we're doing exhaust this episode. I think we're going to start off with that. Get a mad 4-inch happening, eh? Along there. Okay, we're back and we're doing exhaust today. So what I've got now from Ben Brothers is a bunch of stuff. I was waiting on this flex joint. So you always want to run a flex joint when essentially your exhaust potentially will mount to the chassis and then the motor's separate. It'll move on the rubbers, so you want to run that near the dump pipe. So from that 3-inch coming off the back of the turbo, we're going to expand straight to 3.5. That's where we can fit this expansion joint. And then after that, expand up to 4-inch, get it around the corner and down the rest of the car. But in order to do that, I need to get it back under the cab so we can drop the cab down, check all those clearances. So let's get that sorted and then start making up the rest of this dump pipe. All right, exhaust building montage, some of my favorite content to film. Honestly, the last time I did TIG welding was the GQ Patrol, and I get really good at it, and then I don't do TIG welding for like months, and then I come back to it and I have to learn all over again. TIG welding always comes down to practice, cleanliness, but we got back into it. The welds came out not too bad. The dump pipe was the first thing I wanted to sort out. Now I have the cab down, get all the clearances sorted, make this dump pipe, and then continue on with the rest of the exhaust system. Well, shit, I'm actually quite happy with that. I'm getting much better at this exhaust building stuff. I reckon I spent maybe 45 minutes to an hour to make that section. So getting pretty good at this thing, and it seems to be all clearance perfectly with the cab and everything. So what I want to do now is actually take the cab off. I'm happy with how it's working on its way down here on the dump pipe section. I do need to add one more V-band through this section here, but that's easy. I just kind of measure the width of the V-band, cut that out and put it in later. So when the cab's off, then I can go and do the rest of the exhaust backwards. I was a little bit worried about the front drive shaft clearance. Now, this isn't a drive shaft off a 79, but it's actually the perfect length. It's just got the wrong ends on it. So I've got that in there as a bit of a mock-up, and we can see that there's plenty of clearance for that still. So the next thing is I'm gonna have to put a couple of pie cuts just to get over the cross member. At the moment, it's pretty much sitting on that. So I'm happy with this front section, and then I'll add that pie cut to get it away from the cross member and then continue on from there. So let's get the cab off so we can see more how this is gonna look. But I know 100% we've got enough clearance from the cab here. There's about an inch there, so we're good.
A few moments later.
Okay, now we've got the cab off, you can kind of see what I'm trying to achieve here. So all of this section is really good, it clears the cab, that's what we want. Now down this straight piece, it's sort of tight when it goes over the cross members. So what I want to do is just go along, this all looks really good, and then probably about here, just put a little pie cut, kick it up, get it over the cross member, kick it back down again, and then we can build the rest from there. So pretty happy with this first section. So what I'm going to do is go through and fully weld all this up, get that tigged up. I'll probably add a V-band around this section here. So once we do that, this first bit will be done, and then we can basically move on with the rest of the system. Now that the exhaust is done up to a section that I can pretty much build it to, from there on I got to wait until the tray and everything's sorted. We're going to move on to the fuel system. Now there's three major components: the tank, the lift pump, and then all the lines up to the motor. So what I've decided to do, which I'm actually frothing about, is delete the sub tank. In Land Cruisers, they're different to patrols. In a patrol you've got your main and your sub, and the sub transfers into the main tank, and then there's one lot of fuel system up to your motor. With a cruiser, there's two separate tanks, but they pull separately into the engine, which means there's double the amount of fuel pumps, double the amount of hoses, way more complicated stuff going on. So by deleting the sub tank, I've removed a heap of crap from under the cab when it comes to wiring and hoses, really simplified the thing. So to make up for that loss in fuel, I've had to upgrade the main tank to a long range tank. So we've gone for another Brown Davis. I had a Brown Davis in the patrol, and these things have a heap of capacity. I'm pretty sure these are bigger than you can get in patrols. I think these are like 180 litres almost. So plenty of fuel, and then it moves up to a lift pump. So I've got a fast lift pump. Again, the same one I use in the Duramax. Anything American, you really want a good lift pump if you're gonna start pushing a bit of extra power. That also doubles as a filter and a fuel water separator. So I've mounted that on the chassis. I got pretty lucky actually. All I had to do was tap out a couple of holes and then drill another one and tap it into the chassis, and it literally bolts straight on there. It looks like factory. So we'll talk a bit more about the lift pump, but that's mounted. And then obviously all the lines in that, we're gonna be using ProFlow's AN lines fittings. It's fully stainless, braided, and all the AN lines, which is basically the Army, Navy lines that are really reliable and seal perfectly without having to use any thread lock or anything like that. So first things first, let's get this tank out the box, get it mounted into the chassis, and then we can work out where the lines need to go. Well, here's a fun fact for you. The fuel tank doesn't fit. It was actually my fault. Looking back on the emails, I never specified which cruiser I had, and they've actually sent me a dual cab one. I never mentioned anywhere that was a single cab, and they never asked. So I don't know how we messed that up, but unfortunately we need to return that tank, change it for a single cab one. I thought they'd be the same, but turns out the rear cross member on the back of the chassis is different on a single cab to a dual cab. Super annoying. I don't know what Toyota's problem is with making every different variation of this car completely different when it comes to everything. I've figured this out with my seat adapters for the Ricky seats. Every cruiser has a different floor. Now every chassis is different for the fuel tank. What a pain in the arse. So I do want to move on. I did say at the start of this episode that we want to start this engine, and I promise in this episode we're going to try and start this engine. It may start, it may not, but we're at least going to try. But I'm waiting on the body side of the harness for the ECU. So we can't even attempt to do that until the ECU has power. So once that plug arrives, we can go ahead and try and crank this thing. So I ain't gonna keep stopping, I'm not gonna keep stalling on this. I'm gonna start putting the front end together. Now the exhaust is sorted, I just wanna make sure that all the panels fit and there's no other clearance issues. I think it'll be fine, but let's just get everything finger tightened on, mocked up, so we can make sure that there are no issues that we can sort now before we get too deep into this thing.
She sits on her ass, he works his hands to the bone to give her money every payday.
All right, front end is finally going on. I painted these a bunch of episodes ago. They've been sitting in my engine room, keeping clean. They're a little bit dusty, but it's finally time to put them on and start seeing a finished product of how this Land Cruiser is gonna start looking.
Now, why don't you get a job? Sail away.
Okay, front end is on and it is looking good, all freshly painted. This is why I put the effort into paint behind all the guards and everything. It completely looks like the colors changed. I didn't want to go do a closed door spray and still see all the white in the engine bay, so super stoked with that. You'll notice a new radiator. Now, I went to the guys at Phoenix Performance to get an intercooler, and turns out they do a factory replacement radiator, so they sent me out one of them as well, so big shout out to them. Fits perfectly, obviously OEM replacement. Then Kalen from Engine Performance Concepts has put together a fan kit for one of these. So if you want to run a hub fan on the front of your Cummins or your 6BT, this is, I believe it's a D40 Navara fan. So the guys there are obviously trying to keep any custom parts on these readily available if you get stuck out on the track. So they've gone for a common vehicle, a Navara. Pretty much you can get one of these things anywhere you are in Australia. So that's been put on, and the clearance, remember ages ago, I was crossing my fingers and doing a heap of measurements before we had anything, before we had a motor, before we had a radiator, front end, anything, to make sure the clearance, before I welded the engine mounts in, make sure the clearance of the fan between radiator. And we've got like a good 30 mil. So big tick there, awesome job. The fit today is something else. The salmon shorts, the camo, and the Crosbys. Absolutely terrible. My style today is off the charts. Get this thing running. Got to bank some oil in it, but before we do that, the boys sent me out a new Ram sump, which has the rear hump is sitting further back, because at the moment, the rear tie rod would come up and hit the sump on full compression. So, new sump, we'll put that in. It's got a slightly further back hump, and then it will help with that clearance. So while there's no oil in the engine, we'll do that now, because I want a perfect seal on that sump. I do not want it to leak. And then we can fill up the oil and start moving towards firing this thing up for the first time. All right, I'm not gonna lie, one of my biggest pet peeves is having to remove a sump on an engine. I don't know what it is, but as soon as you take that sump off for the first time, they just never seem to seal again and leak for days. So I was really reluctant to do this, but it had to be done. I actually put a little bit of silicone on both sides of the gasket and then made sure to torque the thing up properly. Everything's to spec, everything's sealed and gasketed, so fingers crossed, it's gonna not leak. Okay, with the new sump in, you can see that the steering arm will now clear on full compression, so it was worth it. I didn't want to go ahead and potentially create a leak in my motor if it wasn't even going to fix the problem, but the good news is it clears. Now, look what arrived. That is right, we finally have the other side of the ECU plug. So give me a little bit to go and wire this up and get it prepared, and then we can start the engine. Now, I've already put some new oil in. We put Newlan's Apex diesel oil in. It's just a 1040. This stuff's great for any diesel engine. I use it in my LM106 M57 swapped Hilux as well. Then it's pretty much ready to start. I have a starter motor that's installed. We also got to bang some oil in the gearbox. I've done that. And once this plugs in, power to the starter motor, crank it, potentially build oil pressure. We're probably not going to know because there's no gauges, 0 gauges. We just want to see if this thing fires, runs for a few seconds, and then I'll be happy to move on. So let's do it. Let's start the Cummins for the first time. All right guys, check it out. Look what we have here. I've made up the wiring harness and it is time to start this engine for the first time. Now, there's a bit going on here. It's a little bit primitive, but let's be honest, all good first time engine starts are a little bit like this. We've got no water. We've actually got no diagnostics, to be honest. I have no idea if we've got oil pressure. Now, usually I would be a little bit pedantic about the oil pressure thing, but I know for a fact this exact motor has been started before by the guys at EPC. And that means the oil pump has had fluid go through it. Now, the biggest drama with a fresh engine is the oil pump being dry. When it's dry, it may not suck oil out of the sump. But I know this has already had fluid going through it, so it'll be wet and it will suck, so it should get oil pressure. We're not gonna run it for long. But before we kick this thing in the guts, I'm just gonna run you through what we got going on here because it's a bit on. Oh God, I'm actually really excited about this. The big Cummins for the first time. And you know what? It just started raining. I don't know what that means. It may be a bad sign, but we're gonna fire this thing anyway. All right, engine is good to go. Celebratory stack, why not? We're gonna have stacks coming out this thing for the first start, so a bit of soot. It may not soot, being a common rail. We've wired in the ECU engine side, that's just sitting there, and we've plumbed in fuel lines. Now the rest of the fuel system, don't worry about this yet, Now we had our fuel tank debacle. So this is the feed for the lift pump, comes out of here into the lift pump, then it shoots back out to the engine, and then there's a return from this lift pump that goes back into the tank. This other one is a return from the pump on the engine. So there's 2 returns back into the fuel tank, and then this one here is lifting out. Now that works, I checked that. I started it up, basically these 2 wires here, the red and green. I don't know why it's green, but the green's the earth, red's power. And we have got fuel circulating, and it is dumping back into the return. So that means we're getting fuel up to the motor. Electrical wise, bit going on too. I've just used these as a starter motor cable. So this goes to the positive of the battery. This goes to the block as a negative. Now the big Cummins, she cranked a bit slow off this little battery. It's only 700 cranking amps or something. So I've got SP Tools Big Dog. This is their big 430 amp jump pack, bouncing off this as well. So these 2 together are making this crank. This black one here is my starter motor signal wire. So basically, actually, will it work? Yeah, look at that. See how slow it cranks? Anyway, so that gets the engine cranking. Fuel up to motor, engine cranking. The last thing is ignition. Whew. Now this is how simple this plug is, all right? This is the plug I wired up. Very basic. Red one, power. Black one, earth. Red one, ignition. And then these wires here are for throttle. No idea what this is off of, but the boy sent it to me. I think it might be like a D40 Navara. So we've got electronic throttle, power ground, and ignition. And that should run. So this plug will go onto the other side of the ECU, give it ignition from this wire here that I've set up, and then crank it. Should we see what happens? I don't even, it's pissing rain right now. I don't know if it's a good sign or not. There might be a bit noisy in here, but you know what? We're just gonna see what happens. Let's crank this thing, see if it fires. May not. Let's find out. Woo! God, I'm nervous. The other thing is gearbox. We've got the gearbox connected, but there's no computer for that. So I've plumbed in the oil cooler so it doesn't shoot fluid out, but I also can't run it for long because that gearbox will need, an ECU or something to go. I don't know. I don't want to run it too long, potentially dry, because we can't get heaps of fluid in there. Starter motor. Let's put power to the ECU, see if anything happens. Nothing happens. Fuel. Come on. All right, I'll come back to you. Oh, bummer. Actually, I'm not going to scare you. I'm not saying bummer because it doesn't start. I'm saying bummer because I did get it started and I wasn't filming. You know what it was? I put my EPC hat on and it just fired straight up. Now, what I did is actually just crack some of the injectors and there was a lot of aerated fuel coming out, real airy. So cracked a couple of these and cranked it a bit and it pumped a heap of just shit fuel out. So it still won't start on fuel, but a little bit of start, you bastard. You want to be real careful using a bit of brake cleaner on a diesel because it's such high compression. You only want a little bit of that, otherwise you can damage your engine. And it runs. So let's fire it up for the first time on camera because it did happen before, which I'm really annoyed about. I wasn't filming, but here we go. This poor battery is getting flogged but because it's got no alternator, so it's just purely relying on this. All right, ignition. Let's give it some extra juice. The SP on. We'll see if it goes without this, but I doubt it. There we go. Woo-hoo. Very trucky. How does electronic throttle? There we go, it runs. Look, it doesn't sound amazing. This whole intake situation, I think you're getting a lot of that induction noise, just sucking the air, but it runs. That's all I wanted to know. It's obviously got no water. Once we get diagnostics, OBD, all that kind of stuff put on here, we can really diagnose and make sure everything's running sweet. But I just want to know that it fired, and it did. So thumbs up. We can keep moving with the build. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
All his money